Hey guys, I'm Jerry, growth strategist for Uptick.
And I'm Warren, co-founder of Uptick.
Last episode we talked about soft launching your game. This episode will dive deeper into the first stage of a soft launch, the tech test, and the top 3 things to look out for.
Tip number 1, the tech launch is a chance to QA your data and tracking before you spend any real money. So the data piping is not sexy, but it's very important, and you want to validate it here at the tech test before you expand to larger and more expensive marketing stages. In particular, you want to make sure that you fully implement what's called an attribution provider. That's going to be able to tie the results of your marketing efforts towards the in-game behavior, such as retention and player spending. For mobile games, this attribution provider could be one of the common providers like Adjust, Singular, or AppsFlyer. For PC games, we really like GameSight. You also want to validate at this stage that purchases are working correctly and that you have everything you need to populate any marketing dashboards that you're going to be using in the future phases.
And tip number 2, this is your first opportunity to validate your basic game loop with unbiased players. So you want to look at, does the game work and have a baseline level of functionality? This is your first chance at getting a player's unbiased view of your game and your first chance to get unbiased gameplay feedback. You want to look for things like server stability, identify bugs and squash them as early as possible, and any outlier data points. For example, if you have a 95% drop off after app open, that's an indicative of a very critical bug in the player onboarding.
Tip number 3, you're going to get some very exciting KPIs in the tech test, but you want to take them with a grain of salt. So you're going to see some numbers and you'll probably be tempted to scrutinize them with a magnifying glass, but resist that urge. One thing we recommend is to always look at the cohorts in this phase in a weekly view, not a daily view, because your daily sample size is going to be very small in most cases and lead you to false conclusions. If you go to a low-cost country that we would usually recommend, maybe a market like the Philippines for the tech test, you should also expect that that's going to also cause some bias to your metrics. If you go to a low-cost country, which we do recommend, you can expect the following biases compared to one of your primary markets like the USA. The CPI is going to look lower than it would in a market like the US. The retention will also look lower than a market like the US. And lastly, the monetization will be worse, meaning lower than a market like the US. These are all totally fine and expected behaviors. So just remember, if you do go to a low-cost market for your tech test, that you're properly baselining your metrics.
So now you understand a bit more about tech testing. If you liked what you heard and want to learn more, reach out to one of us or be on the lookout for our next video where we talk about the next stage of a soft launch, the retention test.